Welcome to the Marathon Investigation Podcast, where we discuss and debate the latest news regarding course cutters, bandits, and bib mules.
Hello, this is Derek Murphy. Welcome to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. Trying something a little different today, where I'll try to do this weekly or maybe a little more often. We'll see how it goes, where I get on, talk about what I wrote in the past week, maybe have some updates and what's coming up. So we'll get right into it. One thing I want to talk about, I wrote last week about the Walt Disney World Marathon, and I write about that every year, and I've been critical of how Disney has handled cheating and, when it's obvious cheating. And basically, my experience with them is they really haven't done anything as far as disqualifying runners, especially, where there's not an age group award involved. There were a couple cases that I wrote about of, people who did cheat for Boston qualifying times at Disney. It was obvious to me. One runner had 0 splits and was added after the fact and was kept in the results. I wrote about her. Thankfully, that time she didn't register for Boston, although she had in the past with questionable results. Another runner, Maureen, cut a small portion of the course, I believe. And she had a ridiculous pace, and she's the one I wrote about. She said she had a fast pace because she was having stomach issues and had to run fast to get to the Porta Johns. So ridiculous excuses. That runner stayed in the results and did use that time to run Boston last year. Thankfully, she doesn't have a Boston qualifying time, and she's not registered for the 2019 marathon. So I looked at the Disney results, with the intent of looking for Boston qualifiers. I didn't find anybody cutting the course for Boston or with Boston qualifying time, so that's good. I did write about some repeat cheaters, people cheating, for their Dopey Challenge, which Dopey Challenge is running the 4 races in 4 days, the 5K, 10K, half and full, and couple runners who I believe took the monorail. They didn't register start times, but they have finish times. So we took a look at those and just again highlighted to try to serve as a deterrent, to the people, it's not Boston qualifying times, but anybody who cheats at a marathon, it affects everybody else in the race and affects the integrity of the race. So that's the purpose of writing it. I looked at the Disney race with the intent of looking for Boston qualifiers. I did the work, so I did a quick summary on what I found as far as some repeat cheaters and whatnot. One runner in particular that had posted in a large Disney running group on Facebook, that she wasn't trained. She initially signed up for, I believe, just the 10K, or the 5K and the 10K, and then decided she was going to do the half and the full as well. And it was apparent looking, she missed the 20-mile mat, which was one of the key places where I look for people cutting. It's a long out and back going into the Wide World of Sports section of Disney. So basically, she was, before the third half marathon, she was running or walking at a 17-minute pace or slower, and then she finished at a much quicker pace. And she also had posted, which I didn't put in the article, which I didn't have the information at the time. Even more damning is she had photo at the 22-mile mark, which in her pace calculated between 13 and 22 miles at a 10-minute 19 second per mile pace, which again is much faster than she even ran the half marathon the day before or even the 10K the day before. And then she had a picture at mile 23 where it was showing back at the 17-minute pace. So it was clear that she cut a portion of the course. Well, I had messages from her mom and from her denying it, sending me pace calculations showing that she didn't, trying to show that she didn't cut the course. None of that information was proved anything, and it even hurt her. She sent me Apple Watch data. She said her Apple Watch had died and had stopped recording her run somewhere around mile 11 or 12. I could be off on there, but she sent me step data. The step data had no gap, and her steps for the entire day were, I believe, 52,000 to 53,000. And she even said herself that a marathon would be about 55,000, which is pretty accurate. And so, again, it was clear that she didn't do the full marathon distance when her step count was 52,000 for the entire day. There was no gap in data, which shows me her watch was not malfunctioning during the race. And again, with additional pace calculated with the mile 22 picture and the mile 23 picture. And also, she said she had stopped at medical to get her foot wrapped at mile 16. She said it was no more than 5 minutes, but if you're stopping at mile 16, you stop for 5 minutes. Again, that's 5 minutes less of run time. That means her running pace would even be faster between 13 and 22. So it was clear she didn't run the race, and a lot of back and forth, and got to the point where she demanded I took the article down, or she was gonna contact her lawyer and that she would see me in court. Well, I don't expect that, and I just kept on harping on the evidence I had that this is what I do. I didn't, it was clear. So eventually, she just stopped communicating. So I'm hoping she realizes that, that the evidence I have is strong, and I don't expect I'll hear any more from her. One thing I did want to mention, she did send me something that was disturbing. She had gotten a message. Actually, she got a text from somebody, asking if she was, who they thought she was. And, then the person called her a cheater and, had some very inappropriate things to say to her. It's this kind of behavior that if I ever stop writing for the site, it's going to be because of stuff like this. That doesn't help anything. I don't know who this person was. I don't know that they were a follower, or if they just saw it from the group or whatever. But I intentionally didn't reveal her bib number, and I didn't state her full name. But again, when I hear about stuff like this, it makes me even want to go less. To where it's we're not going to if I make it completely unidentifiable, then I can't really talk about split data, and I can't talk about times. I have to be vague with that, and I had to give less and less information that I think is oftentimes critical to the story. And in this case, and she had posted to the large group in the Disney, for the Run Disney Run Facebook group. She was out there, so there wasn't going to be any hiding her identity, because that was really part of the story. Is hey, if you're going to post to that many people. And then you're going to cheat, it's gonna come out. There was another situation a couple weeks ago where there was a couple who basically, they did dopey, and they basically did it relay style for the marathon, and that got a lot of traction on the board and a lot of attention. And I chose not to write about that because, again, it was already rehashed, and I try not to write about things that have already been, fully broken and fully vetted elsewhere. So I did not choose to write on that couple. But again, if you're going to post publicly, and if you, and again, the couple who did the relay, they didn't post anything on social media, so they were, so that's another reason why I didn't, focus on them. But again, if you're gonna post looking for the kudos and the accolades and all that, and saying that you did it and thanking for the support where you really didn't do it, that's something I'm gonna typically latch on to. But that does not make the again, she said she had hundreds of comments and hundreds of threats. I don't believe that, but I did see she sent me a copy. I do believe that she had the one, at least the one very inappropriate comment. So again, if that doesn't help me, that doesn't help the effort to stop cheating. If anything, that would be what kind of makes me step back what I do. So don't behave like that if you're listening. If you know anybody who does, let them know that as well. Beyond that, looking forward, the articles I'm working on, one I've been working on for really a couple weeks now, involved a runner who was attempting to break over a 40-year-old record for the fastest run across New Zealand. And he had initially claimed the record and beat it by like 15 minutes or 17 minutes, not by much. But about a week later, after again claiming that he broke the record, he said he was not going to claim his time as a record time because there were portions of the course, small portions of the course where it was unsafe or too much traffic, where he got driven, to a more safer area to continue his run. So never said how many miles or kilometers he thought he was shorted, but the kind of the tone of the comment made it seem like it was minimal, but enough to where, but since where it shouldn't count for the record. The feedback from his sponsors and from the public was all positive, saying, but one of his only crew member for the second half of his trek came out and said the story is much different than that. So I spoke with him for about an hour. He had a Facebook post, and so his version of what happened was much different than what Perry's version was. And so I'm going to write about that. I'm just really wrapping up the details, reaching out to sponsors, reaching out to Perry himself, reaching out to a couple of the people that get every side of this that I can. But it really reminded me a lot of Rob Young. Rob Young was the runner who was trying to break the record for the fastest transcon across America, and it was determined that he had ridden a lot of miles in the RV. So to me, this is very similar. Again, there was the charity aspect with Rob, the rallying cry of all his supporters. Well, hey, it's for the kids. Almost like, hey, who cares? He's raising money. It's for the kids. This had the same kind of feel for it. The money raising wasn't on the same scale, but Perry was raising money for charity. I think he raised. It was like $7,000 in the New Zealand currency. I think that was we're around $5,000 American currency, so it wasn't a lot. I think probably spent a lot more money doing this, and his sponsor probably spent a lot more money on him than what was raised for the charity. But again, that was still kind of the reason I think this was allowed to go on as long as it did. But I will be writing about this in detail, and I expect that article to be ready on Tuesday or Wednesday of this week at the latest. The last thing I posted on the Marathon Investigation Facebook group yesterday, just asking if anybody had any questions or anything they wanted me to hit on when I do this. And again, you can continue contacting me, and I'll be happy to answer questions. A couple of the questions that were asked were, one, somebody who is a race director asked about Boston, the BAA, and the Boston qualifying standards, and if, the thoughts on the course needing to do more, races having to do more than just having the distance certified. Right now, any course that is certified by the USATF of being 26.2 miles is eligible to be a Boston qualifying race. There's no stipulations for timing mats or anything else. I definitely advocate for some more requirements. I don't know necessarily if I would say, hey, you have to have a certain number of timing mats or like that, because that would eliminate some small races that probably do a very good job and use other methods, monitors on course and whatnot, and I don't want to exclude them from being Boston qualifiers. And really, what I want doesn't really matter. It's the BAA, but I do think races that knowingly look the other way and don't remove obvious cheaters, and those cheaters are allowed to continue, to run Boston, on times that are bogus. So those are the ones that should be, in my opinion, held accountable. Disney, for example, there were a couple. There was the runner, Maureen, that I wrote about last year, who was allowed to run Boston in 2018 on a time that was highly suspect. Another runner had a Boston qualifying time and had entered Boston in the past using times that were very questionable. She had 0 splits at Disney and was added to the results after the fact with no evidence that she completed the course. I think the scrutiny from the site probably prevented her from registering for Boston again. But again, Disney would be an example of one that, as things stand now, I would like to see them not be a Boston qualifier. And really, I don't think that would hurt Disney too much. There are runners who earn the BQ times at Disney, but Disney doesn't market themselves as that. Races like Honolulu and Philadelphia, it's again, I would like to see them held to a higher standard, and I think the BAA is the only organization that really has that power, because most of the races pride themselves on being and they'll advertise themselves as being a Boston qualifier, even though it's all they have to do is be certified and measured and have results posted online and run a real race. So I'm all for higher standards. That's up to the BAA, and I don't know if they have the resources or desire to go into that level of detail. They have done a better job at, when runners are brought to their attention, of reaching back out to the qualifying race and asking for more information, asking them to confirm that a race was legitimate. So I think that's helped. So they have done more. I'm not sure how much more they can or are willing to do, but definitely, if you have concerns about a certain race, and you email the BAA, reach out to them, and see if we can take steps in that and take into further maintaining the integrity of the race and doing a little bit more. Another question somebody asked was, what if they see somebody cutting a course or see someone doing something inappropriate on a course, and they reach out to the race director, and the race director doesn't respond? What's the course of action? What should they do? Can always email me. If the data supports what you saw, if I can look at something definitive besides, hey, this is what I saw, I can push, and sometimes I have better luck getting a response than maybe a runner. So you can reach out to me. I would also recommend, if you see something, you notice a timing issue, they think suspect, go start with a timer. Usually there's a link on the results page, to reach out to the timer. The timers are the ones that really kind of get into the details and, go through that with more of a fine-tooth comb than the race director after a race. The race director is, probably worrying about vendors and the next race and a lot of other things. So sometimes, not always, but, sometimes they don't, have time to deal with all that, or that's not their focus. So I would always start with a timer when you see something on a course, because they'd maybe more apt to, a lot of times I know they have contact with the photographers, and they'll check with the photographers and timestamps and maybe get a little more information than even I can easily. And again, I think the timers generally, they want the results to be accurate, as do the race directors. But maybe if you see something, start with a timer instead of the general email or the race director. You might have better luck that way. And the last question I got was regarding charity. Someone asked me if I've ever investigated whether money from races that's supposed to go to charity actually gets to the charity. I really haven't in detail in a broad scope, and I don't intend to. That's kind of outside of my realm in general. I would think that most of the major races that have title sponsors or a title charity, I think the money would get to the charity, or it would be a pretty big story, and that wouldn't be kept quiet. There was one or two instances where I have heard that money didn't go to the charity, and I had reached out, and he's like, well, no, we didn't get all the money that was promised, and we didn't get it yet, but I think we probably will. I'm still working with them, getting excuses, and they didn't want me to push it. So I'm certainly not going to go around a charity to push, a marathon and try, with the fear of, okay, hey, if we do this, we're not going to get anything. So, if a charity were to reach out to me and say, hey, the race said they gave us $50,000, we got nothing, then I would certainly write about that. But the charity would need to cooperate, for me to be able to write anything. So, but I would think in general, especially for the major marathons, that wouldn't be an issue. There were some other issues. I wrote about the Wish Runner, he was a gentleman who was trying to break the record for the most 70.3 triathlons in a year, and he had the Wish Runner Foundation where you could donate money to support Make-A-Wish, and there was a children's tumor charity, and as it turned out, when I pushed, 80% of the money donated through that link was going to the expenses for this triathlete to complete the races, and really don't even know if the 20% got to the charities. When I reached out to Make-A-Wish, what they received through that was very minimal. But again, that triathlete had cut the course in his very first triathlon. I wrote about that, and then the charity stuff, and he didn't attempt anymore. So it was more or less a moot point after that. But as he didn't get a whole lot of contributions, and it died. So yeah, so this is specific cases, but in general, I would think the money probably does go to the charities. But if you have any suspicions, definitely reach out to the charity, reach out to whomever. Again, that's not my main focus, but if you run a charity and we're done wrong by a race, you can definitely reach out to me, and that may be something I would write on, but I would have to hear from the charity directly. And really, I think that is about it. I just wanted to touch base again. And again, we may do this later in the week or next week as well. Please, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/marathoninvestigation and you make a one-time or monthly contribution. As little as one-time contribution can be any. The monthly can be $3, $5, up to $10. And with $10, you'll get bonus content, which we're going to be putting more up. We have one bonus episode up now regarding Mike Rossi, kind of going through the history of that and how it's still ongoing. And there's still a bit of an obsession with him. So if you're not familiar with that, that's a good one to listen to. And we'll put some more up. I may put up my discussion with the crew member for Perry Newburn. I had talked to him in about an hour, and I recorded that. So with his permission, I may put that up as not sure, either a bonus episode or a regular episode, where with his, thoughts and what he witnessed, during the run across New Zealand. And also Scott and I, even before we did the podcast, we talked about Jane Benfer. She's kind of the ultimate ultra troll, and she's done some damage, whether it's to some good races by kind of claiming that they're fraudulent, and she's definitely you may have seen her. You see comments, you see the laughing emoji on pretty much any comment. It's usually her, and that's her real name is Risa Reed, but she goes by Jane Benfer. And Scott and I kind of talk about that. And I probably will at some point write an article on that, and do what I can to try to just make people aware of that behavior. When you see this laughing emoji on a very serious post, knowing how to take it. And if you see her posting somewhere that someone's doing a fake race, you don't take that with a grain of salt. So I'll probably do a little bit more on that as well as far as an article, but we'll put that up as a bonus episode as well. So that is just about it for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you all next time.
Thank you for listening to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. Have a questionable result to report? Visit marathoninvestigation.com to contact us, or email Derek at results@marathoninvestigation.com.
Another case closed.